I would say 1964 is when the church really kind of started. But I actually came out in 1963, summertime. Yeah. I became a Christian that summer because I went to Christian camp and was introduced to the gospel, and then I placed my faith in Jesus. So that I thought, okay, I'll be coming out to this church. Yeah, so. I was invited by my friend Jerry or Geraldine, and when I first came out to the church, we were meeting in the afternoons at Hamilton Square Baptist Church, because at the time I was attending another church in the mornings, and so my friend says, "Oh, we're meeting in the afternoon. You know, you need to come." And she was one of my good friends, so that's how I came out. And then Pastor Sen Wong was there, and then Ben Wong was also there with his wife. And what they did was they found a house out in the Richmond district. So their first house was on 9th Avenue, and we met there. And then they moved to 12th Avenue, and we were there for a long time. We met in the garage, yeah. And so it was fixed up so that it looked more like a sanctuary with rugs put in and, you know, chairs and all that, yeah. At the very beginning of our church, we had, forgive me because I can't remember, about a dozen people. Yeah, because Ben had some helpers who came along, and yeah, I would say about a dozen, yeah.
Soon after, late 64 or early 65, and I had gone to a church in Chinatown, and at that church we had people like Victor Kwong, Jackson Chan, who eventually moved over to our church. And so they had talked to us about a new church that started out in the Richmond district, and that's how I was introduced to this church. We loved the Friday night meetings. Irene and I were actually student council members in a high school group. And then later on, we became sponsors of the high school group. So, you know, the Lord brought us through all these experiences as a participant, and then gave us the opportunity where we can actually sponsor them. And then I think we first started to meet upstairs in the living room.
Mm-hmm. In the dining room?
Yeah, dining room, and before they remodeled the garage. And then we went down to the garage, and Victor Kwong, you know, built all that staging and all the flooring for us, so that we had almost like a regular church environment, you know, very rectangle-ish.
Mm-hmm. So it was kind of strange. The junior church was because it was a home environment. It wasn't, when I went to Chinese school, it was in a church environment where it was a church building, had a sanctuary. But when we first came to San Francisco Bible Church, it was someone's home, and the adult Sunday school class was in the living room. The junior hires was like in the back room, like a dining area, and the junior hires were in there. And then eventually when we got to high school, actually Wayman Ju was one of our first high school teachers, and we were in the kitchen. So but then like my brother was even weirder because the junior boys was in Victor Kwong's van. So all the boys were in the junior, in his little green van, and they held Sunday school. He would be in the front seat, and the boys would all be in the other rows. So, but it wasn't unusual, but it was just like, okay, this was church. The van would always be parked out in front of the 12th Avenue. So I don't think they would do that these days with a bunch of boys sitting in front of a church, because, people would probably call it in or something. But back then, nobody thought anything of it. Albert was part of a quartet. Wayman Ju was instrumental in a lot of the music. So amazingly, Sandy's been playing a long time. Sandy now Liang, but it was Sandy Jung at the time. I remember coming and she would be there Sunday mornings playing piano for Virginia because they would have Singspiration before Sunday school started.
And how old was Sandy at that time?
She was about the same age as my sister, so she was less than around fifth grade. So she was playing piano for us.
And that time, I think it's was late pastor Ben Wong. He gave the message, and also he gave an invitation. And I paused a little bit, and he commented me about my sin. It's really heavy loaded, my sin and me, and so I accepted Christ the first time I attended church event. I still recall it was dark after the service. Then Bobby Chen that took me inside a small room, looked like a small room with a light bulb, on top, and kind of scary in a way, for the first time to attend a church, right? and I didn't know what him, but he kind of gave me confirmation and asked me questions to confirm my faith. That's the first time I attended SFBC in 1978.
We kept adding more people on. I wasn't the first, 71 I came. People still kept coming because of friends at college, and they came, more people come in the 70s, and our church had grown pretty big, and so we needed a bigger place. That garage will hold us, so we looked for another building. That building across the street was for sale. It was Ed May's aunt, and she's a believer, so she was willing to sell to our church a little much cheaper than the market price. So that's how we got the building.
The pastors taught us about giving. There was a special word for it, and we were told to give. And many of us were just high schoolers, college, and we just gave, and then we trusted the Lord. Mm-hmm. And the Lord allowed us to purchase that building.
There weren't a lot of that many professionals. There were a lot of people were just coming out of school. So that first generation, that sacrifice was pretty huge. You hear about people testifying, like giving up lunches, vacations, just to give the money to the church because they saw that, and we're building on their shoulders of their giving, their sacrifice, their love, and some of them are still among us today. So we're deeply indebted to them. I remember going through the old sanctuary before they put up the walls. That it was just the frame, and I remember going through it. I don't think I was allowed to go walk in a broken frame.
Certain people could do it.
But I remember, because I didn't have a hard hat or anything, but I remember looking at it and just saying, wow, this is, because it used to be our backyard, and it had dirt and bushes and bugs and everything, and they had cleaned all that out, and now they're putting up a frame. And the old back door, it was now bolted. Now they're eventually going to reconnect it. But it was just amazing to see that go up. And then when we got in there, it was such a fresh air, because we'd been in a garage, with low ceilings. This one had, nice. It had a sound system, it had a stage, it had everything that it felt like a real church.
I first came to SFBC the summer of 1984 when my father became the Cantonese pastor. That year. So back then I was a rebellious teenager. So many of the elderly today, they still remember. They call me Kwai Doi, Kwai Jai. And I recall the Cantonese Sunday service was held in a small room in the annex of 498 Funston. We had about maybe 20 people in attendance, and back then it was Mr. and Mrs. Chester and Carol Lee, Mr. and Mrs. Frank and Joanne Yim, and Mei Hua Huang. They were the core.
that time was Pastor Chan was the pastor, Cantonese side, and really I was amazed. I mean, to learn all this, the original text. I mean, from Greek or Hebrew. You know, he a lot of times during his service preaching, he used explain to what's the original text, the original language, right? What's the meaning? So really benefit a lot to learn the Bible. I mean, what the meaning of, true meaning of it. Actually, people attend a couple of his classes about how to learn about the Greek language and grammar. Then at that time, there's a Cantonese side that talk about around 40, 50 people around that time. And and I just benefit both for this church about the Bible teaching, the solid Bible teaching, open my eyes and to how to interpret the Bible correctly.
At that time, the church was growing. We had a new pastor. I think Pastor said wanted to move on to something else, and he needed some replacement, right? So he knew my brother-in-law, Wayman Lee. He's going to be the speaker at our anniversary dinner. He's the pastor up in Seattle, so Pastor sent something up there to talk to him and any candidates to send down to San Francisco to be a pastor. So that's how it started.
And so we had hired this new guy named Henry, who was from like a different organization called the Master Seminary, and there was other connections there with Pastor Wayman, and so I think there was a lot of connections with Pastor Henry. But I remember that was exciting because he was coming in as the youth pastor. I think that was probably around when I was in junior high, and so my sister was going to be in high school, and so he was teaching the high school, all the high school Sunday school classes and things like that.
He preached the word. That's we wanted that. It was different from how Pastor Sen preached, and other people preach. He preached a different way at that time, so we learned a lot from the scripture from him. So getting fed steak instead of a hamburger, but that's fine. We fed God's word and soaking it all in.
I do remember Pastor Sen at one point say, "Oh, he would make a good pastor," and I'm thinking, I don't think so, but okay. But Pastor had that dream. Pastor Sen had that dream for all the kids.
I remember things like being in Sunday school class, being in one of the rooms, having like Auntie Rhoda and Auntie Virginia. Those were some of the Sunday school teachers there. And then my mom and Auntie Irene, Uncle Bobby, they were some of the Sunday school teachers. But the one Sunday school class we had in elementary school, there was the legend of the cootie chair. So there was, all the chairs were yellow and gray, like silver, except for one. One was yellow and red. And as the legend goes, at some point, probably before I even came into that class, someone had wiped a booger on that chair. And so that was the booger chair. And we all called it the cootie chair. So you always had to be not last to class because you never wanted to sit in the booger chair, the cootie chair. And if you did, then you were kind of unclean for the rest of the day. Like nobody wanted to talk to you. Like you were the cootie chair kid. But I remember, so if you ask like people my age, like Casey and like Kristen, they'll all remember like the cootie chair. So anyways, that's just right.
So for sure for the adult classes, it was, you go down those narrow stairs into the basement, and it was really cool because we had 4 or 5 rows of chairs set up, but then you also had the side benches, I guess, right? And it was just so cool during that time to see how people were passionate about wanting to learn more about the Bible, and so that room was packed out. Every seat in those rows were taken. People were seated on the benches on the side, and even to have people hanging outside the door, pouring into the area between the laundry room and the bathroom. It was just so cool to see. People really wanted to learn, and it didn't matter if they couldn't hear. It didn't matter if they were just kind of straining to hear from the outside. It was just really cool to have that such a visible and tangible reminder of the fact that our people love the Lord and love His Word and wanted to learn.
Well, let's talk about Sunday first. Sunday we have this, service at the sanctuary, and then we go through the kitchen and then go to the classroom. I think we, most of the time at 498, I think we have two Sunday school classes. One is at the basement, okay? And I think the second one is also in the basement, but in the back end. There's two sections in the basement, if you remember. And we're sitting on those blue-green plastic chairs. I think we still got them when we just moved in, but we don't have them now. But those are the chairs that we use in the basement. So it was very cozy, my feeling and remembrance, And the same thing that never changes, we always have food at the Sunday school. So that's our Sunday school class. And Friday fellowship, I think we have it at the sanctuary sometime at the very beginning. I think later we moved back to the basement, right?
Yes, for reason.
Yeah, for what reason?
See,
we're shrinking, maybe, the size of it.
Besides, see, God has His timing.
Yeah.
Besides, we are less people, but
English department is growing.
wow, that the young single professional all of a sudden becomes like,
Yeah.
wow, it's like a troop came to the church, 80 people at a given Friday night, and they are not going home until 12 o'clock midnight.
So
I said, wow, so we have to, wow, this group, we have to go, scary.
But we praise the Lord for that, because that means that we're growing. It doesn't matter which, part of the church, but we're growing. So we get to the basement, I think, using the smaller room, and then the younger group is in the sanctuary.
I still remember the name called ETC.
The only.
We became kind of the workforce of the church because we were like the young people. And so when it came to moving people or like serving at certain ministries, like ETC was kind of like on call. And it was cool because it was like serving for us was an opportunity for us to fellowship with one another and to have that camaraderie. So it was like a win-win situation. We're serving the Lord, but we're also like spending time with our friends. And fellowship group for us, that was our friend group. Like it wasn't like just obligatory you come, but you have your friends on the side. It was like, no, those were your friends. And so like, we didn't just see each other on Friday, we saw each other on Saturday and Sunday. And sometimes even during the week. So it's like, there's this like huge family feel for a good 3 to 4 years with that ETC group. Yeah. And when I first started coming to San Francisco Bible, we were small enough to where when we had retreats, we actually rented out this mansion. And a huge memory that I have from there was, I remember when Stephen Chang first started coming to our church, and this mansion had this giant water slide on the side of the building that would let off into a pool. It was kind of a makeshift water slide, and Stephen Chang went down and he didn't make it in the pool. And it was like, at the time it was scary, right? Because he was bleeding and stuff, but he was okay. But yeah, I remember that. That was our last. Ironically, that was our last time at that location.
But I met a young man and named Alton at our summer camps, CBM summer camps, and he was interested in being pastor. I counseled him, encouraged him to go. He was open to go anyway. So eventually, I always tracked with him. I learned he was graduating. And so it was awesome. When near graduates, I asked him what his plans were. I said, well, if you don't have any plans, I think I invited him to come and come alongside us. And it was one of the best decisions ever made. I think that's a lot of the best decisions is bringing along other people in the ministry. And he was a great, a great leader and blessing to the church in the years that he served with us.
Pastor Alton was so influential in helping us to think about the community around us. And I really appreciated that, just because, you know, for the most part, SF Bible, we do really well in terms of Bible knowledge. We love studying the Word, and that's great, but it doesn't mean anything if it just stays within the walls of the church. And so having Pastor Alton, and even just hanging out with him and seeing how friendly and gregarious he was, and how he was trying to even use opportunities like when he was at the gym to evangelize to people, was very helpful to think about how do we as Christians try to be involved with the community and trying to have a gospel witness, not just during our outreach events, but throughout all of our lives.
The manovers. Okay, so it's done and over, so I can say what we were doing at the building. We were throwing like dodgeballs at the walls, and like we had like a deep fryer. We were deep frying all types of things like cookies and just weird stuff, and like it was just kind of a time for like the younger guys to kind of spin together and get in all types of shenanigans. It was fun. We had a really good time, but that's when the church building 401 wasn't being used for church. It was being used for manovers.
But I remember feeling very welcomed and loved. Like as soon as I walked in the doors, like all these different older women came up and they're like, I'm Auntie this, I'm Auntie that, and I know your brother, or no, I know like your husband, I saw him grow up and stuff like that. So I felt really loved right away. And then even after, like other people would come up to me and welcome me into the church. And then I remember going through that like little kitchen area thing to get outside. But first they're like, you have to get all these homemade things. So I got to eat like a whole bunch of homemade goodies from different aunties. And then the other thing I remember is just that everyone loved being together. Like they were together in the service, like before, and then they had to sit down, and then after the service they would go through the kitchen, and then they would just be hanging out on the sidewalk. And they just loved being together, and they just talked there for I don't even know how long, but like even after we left, I still saw like groups of people everywhere. So I just remember feeling very loved by people, and then that I just remember everyone loved being together. So the church body just loved fellowshipping and just hanging out together.
And it was hard. It was hard during the pandemic years, kind of always wondering, are we making the best decisions? But you know, thankfully we had a group of elders. And so that's always been the assurance, is that if our elders are one and unanimous in what we're deciding, then we're going to trust the Lord that the Spirit leads us in that way. Of course, remembering now as when being in front of a camera, how I had to actually set up my own camera and record the sermons. It was just me in the whole room, just turning on the AV, flipping all the switches, getting the camera ready, getting the lapel mic ready. It was kind of hilarious now that I think back to preaching to an empty room, recording it, and then putting it all together on the disc and sending it to you or to others. So that was fun, kind of.
Yeah, I think it was an adjustment, because I didn't know a lot of people, and then we shut down. So yeah, I think during that time we definitely learned to be very intentional with one another, meeting virtually and trying to find creative ways to drop stuff off to people and still show care. And yeah, I think during that time we definitely learned to be more thankful for being able to have a building and meet in person, and just for all the parks in San Francisco too. So yeah, I think eventually found my way.
It's 7 years, but it kind of just feels like just a couple of years. And I don't think it's all because I'm busy with young kids, or not necessarily because the pandemic took out a couple of years. I think it really was that it went by fast because the times were not they weren't necessarily hard. Yeah. They were good.
I also really enjoyed the church picnics too, just because you get to meet and hang out with people on a more casual basis, and it's outside where everyone's just having fun and over really good food. And I know SFBC is really big on great food, so I appreciate that. I also have appreciated the women's events where not only was I able to be a part of it, but serve in different ways as well. And to me, it just reminded me that like the women of this church are really good, and they know how to lead, and they know how to put together not only a great event, but for the reasons of like bringing the women together to encourage each other, as well as lead worship and over great food and just a time of like getting to know one another better. So I definitely appreciate those times that we get to have together.
I did choose to stay because the teaching is biblical. I think for me that was number one, and I think also there were a lot of people around my age that were very friendly, and I thought like, oh, like this is a church that I can build friendships at, and yeah.
Yeah, I think for us, some things we're looking forward to is raising our future family, God willing, inside the church. Just kind of growing alongside other fellow church members who are walking in a similar path as us as well. We're looking forward to seeing how we can utilize the new church building that we just purchased, and to see how we can expand it within our communities. Really love seeing how Fall Festival is growing, seeing how like Kit Kat's growing, and all these kids that are coming from the community, just how we can use our resources to welcome families to our church.
And then I still envision that I can worship with all current elders, pastors, if not even more of them, and the whole congregation. We're all together in one sanctuary and singing praise to our God. That is the moment away. I think a lot of time we think we're capable in the sense that because we have knowledge. But the more I look into the project, I face different hurdles. I always keep reminding myself, and also God really showing me, and I even share with Helen, God already put a lot of stuff around our church, in our church, to prepare for His own glory. So that is something that I cannot wait much long, but I know have to be patient, because God will work things out for us. So I can walk with my peers in the gym to exercise, right? San Francisco is too cold to go outside. I still can walk in the gym, get my exercise, Tai Chi with William, and we are happy, right? And you know, maybe two basketball with the youngster, next generation, praise together, and also see a lot more new faces that God call into salvation, which means the church can grow. The church will have a lot more life, the life from Christ. And that's why I really have this dream in my mind that I cannot share it all, but I know this will be a great thing God is doing among us. I know. So 60th anniversary kicks off for another 10, 20 years for God's glory and grace to come, which is awesome. Anticipating. We're not looking at we are old, but we are looking forward. God can do 60 years of amazing grace to us, and He can abundantly build His own church. I'm looking forward. How about 70 and 80? What God will do for us? We should be anticipating for that. Don't think of just the old time. Forward looking, because eventually we all will go into eternity. And that is the ultimate days. So I use this milestone for myself to remind myself, oh, you know, God is doing better and better, better and better. So in eternal, that will be the most awesome time I see my Lord, right? It is moving forward instead of thinking back. So thinking back is to count the blessings, so that build my own confidence, build my own faith to move forward. God will accomplish His own plan. That's my vision and my thoughts.